job is it to protect our children in school?
No one entity can take care of all these problems. The police department can't enforce the laws in a community without the community's help.
Today on Weekend Connection, we'll examine what parents can do to help protect their children in school. I'm Vic Gregory, and let's get connected. On May 24th, a tragic scene unfolded at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. 18-year-old Salvador Ramos crashed his car into a ravine adjacent to the school. A teacher who was outside of the building to retrieve food she had prepared for her students witnesses that crash and props open a door of the school with a rock. She goes inside to retrieve her phone and comes back outside to call 911. By that time, Ramos has exited the car and begun making his way toward the school. The teacher sees him approaching with a rifle, goes back inside, kicks the stone out of the door, and pulls it shut. Unfortunately, the door doesn't lock, and Ramos enters the school, walks down a hallway, enters 2 classrooms, and proceeds to fire more than 100 rounds at students and teachers. Within the next 4 minutes, hundreds of shots are fired, and before the carnage ends, 19 children and 2 adults would lose their lives. Today on Weekend Connection, we'll take a look at gun violence in public schools and what can be done to help alleviate the problem. Joining me today is someone who works to ensure the safety of almost 18,000 students in a major school district in Missouri. He served with the Columbia Police Department for almost 21 years. He is currently the Assistant Director of Safety and Security for Columbia, Missouri Public Schools, and he just happens to be my brother, Ken Gregory. And Ken, I am excited to have you on our Weekend Connection program today. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited to be a part of it.
Well, first of all, let's discuss your job a bit. What exactly are your responsibilities?
Well, kind of changes every day, but general safety and security for the buildings, that can range from repositioning cameras, making sure that they're working properly, doors and alarms, doing drills at different schools, checking on personnel and liaison with the police department, and then other duties as assigned.
Well, what would you say are the obstacles that make it difficult for you to do your job?
Probably the biggest obstacle would be a mindset. It won't happen here, it can't happen here mindset. If we thought that somebody was going to break into our home, we'd all have alarms on our home. Mm-hmm. We'd all have fortified doors. So it's easy to fall into that mindset. Mm-hmm. What precautions would an individual take if they felt something was really going to happen? And then the budget. There are practical, reasonable budget concerns that we all have to deal with. And probably lastly, I would say it's one of the obstacles is myself, just keeping that balance between what's reasonable, what's practical, and balancing that with the reality of the world that we live in. Mm-hmm. You know, we don't want to fortify schools like a prison. That's not reasonable. But we do want to keep people safe.
Right. Do you think that there are enough quality control or safety officers in schools across America?
I don't. And again, though, I have to keep that balance in my mind. Luckily here, we work well with law enforcement. We have a good working relationship. They have provided school resource officers in some of the schools. But again, we have to look at their budget and our budget and come to a happy medium. Would we like to have more? Of course we would. Would they like to place more? Of course they would. But the reality is they have to have so many officers for the entire city, and we can't always meet the needs that we all want to meet.
Right.
Some of the things our department here has done to assist us, though, although they may not be able to place a a resource officer in every school. They have recently provided laptop computers for all their officers. So their officers can, whatever beat they're in, come into one of our school buildings and do their police reports.
Oh, that's good.
So it gives that visibility and builds those relationships between the police department and officers and the students.
That's a creative idea. We're talking with my brother, Ken Gregory, who is the Assistant Director of Security and Safety for the Columbia, Missouri Public School District, and we're discussing what can be done to help protect students from violent attacks with firearms in public schools. Our listeners may not be aware, Ken, that there was a potentially disastrous situation avoided in a high school about 30 miles north of you. A student there was detained after he brought a handgun to school. And I know that you can't give us a lot of details about it, but can you share how it was determined that that student had a gun in his backpack before he was able to do anything with it?
Well, you know, as a police officer, I worked narcotics and undercover for a number of years, and you develop informants, and that's how you make a case.
Mm-hmm.
But no one has informants like a school teacher.
Mm.
The trust that students have in their teachers, in some cases, their teacher is their parent, their best friend, their confidant. So the relationship that a student has with his teacher or administrator in the building is key. Our success is based on if these kids see something, they tell somebody. Because really in these types of situations, when something like this happens, that teacher in the classroom, those students, they are the true first responders. Oftentimes, these kids, whether it be something posted on social media, a note passed, something said in the hallway, 99% of the time, someone knows about it. The perpetrators of these types of crimes have told someone. And luckily for us in our district, the kids will speak up and share that information.
In that particular instance, that gun was stolen from that student's parents. In other words, he brought the gun from home, a gun that belonged to his parents. And as a matter of fact, according to one study, 54% of incidents of gun violence in schools involve students bringing guns to school from home. In light of that, what would you say to parents who own guns?
The biggest thing, you know, if you have a gun at home or have several guns at home, you want a secure, locked place to keep those. A gun safe is ideal, but if not, it needs to be locked up somewhere. And if you're the type of individual that you may carry a gun every day, you need to check on that gun every day. Those times that it's not with you, you need to make sure it's where it's supposed to be. And if it's not, you need to notify law enforcement immediately.
It's a good tip. What are some of the other practical steps that parents can take to help ensure the safety of their children in local schools?
Something that I discussed with my daughters and even with my wife, it's not just applicable to the school setting, stores, movies, the mall. We'll go to the mall, and you know the mall has different corridors that you can exit. And we get into the routine. Okay, I'm going to park by Cafe Court. I'm going to exit Cafe Court. Well, if I park at Cafe Court and I'm on the other side of the mall and something bad happens, I don't want to go back possibly through whatever's going on to exit.
Right.
But if I've never been down one of those, it may be a service corridor, and I will take those exits sometimes just to see where it's going to put me out in the mall, where in the parking lot. In a school building, we practice fire drills. I don't think there's a student in America that doesn't know what to do in a school during a fire drill. Something that we've started is, you know, you have your escape route. If I'm in this classroom, I go this way out of the building during a fire drill. Well, what if I put a barricade up there? You can't go that way.
Right.
Do I freeze? because that's the way I've always done. No, we have to figure out, we have to think through another way to go. And I think that's the thing that parents can help their children do, to practice, mentally practice. Okay, you can't go this way today, but we will do what we practice doing.
Right.
And if we don't practice doing anything, a lot of times we'll just freeze.
I have read some of the comments that have been publicly shared by a member of your school board regarding this issue. Her name is Carolyn King, and she recently said that current safety procedures are discussed at active shooter training that Columbia Public School District employees, building personnel, and students attend at least once a year. Can you discuss that aspect of your safety protocol for us?
I can. We currently subscribe to the ALICE model of, I would say, active shooter and intruder situations. And ALICE is an acronym, stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. And that is what we train all of our staff and all of our students in. It was started by Greg Kane, who was a police officer for, I believe, over 30 years, and his wife was an educator. And after one of the school shootings, he asked his wife, "What do they teach you guys to do?" And she said, "Lock the door, turn off the lights, and sit quietly." And he thought, as a police officer, well, that's not enough. And what ALICE teaches is the individual in that situation, the teacher, has to be able to make the best decision for herself and the students that she's in charge of at that time. And if there's shots being fired in this building, if I'm not in this building, I can't get shot. So if you can get out, if you can get away, then you want to get away.
Right.
And that's it in a nutshell, but there's more to it. If you can't, then you barricade. You lock the door, you barricade the door, and you may be able to go out a window. There's someone on the cameras giving real-time information as to where this bad person is. They have left your area. You can go back out and get out of the building.
Well, obviously, there's a lot more that needs to be said regarding this issue. Unfortunately, we have used up our time together. But as we wrap up, what thoughts would you like to leave with our listeners?
Well, I would say we pray for our children about so many things, but praying for their education and their safety, we've got to pray for that. Because if a child doesn't feel safe at school, they're not going to learn.
Right.
You can't learn if you're looking over your shoulder or you're worried about what's going to happen. So, like everything else in our lives, prayer is the key. And talking to them about it. We can't shelter our children from this anymore, whether it's a private school, a public school, an elite Ivy League school. These types of things happen everywhere. And we've all got to be involved and recognize that we have a voice. We've got to use that voice and become stakeholders in the problem.
Well, we've been talking with my brother, Ken Gregory, who is the Assistant Director of Safety and Security for the Columbia, Missouri school system. And we've been discussing what can be done to protect students from gun violence in public schools. And Ken, it has been informative, and I thank you for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
All righty. Well, that's our broadcast, and we invite you to join us again next week as we'll address yet another topic of interest to the Christian community here on the Weekend Connection broadcast on the Bible Broadcasting Network.
Thank you for listening to this feature, a production of BBN, the Bible Broadcasting Network. BBN provides 24-hour Christian programming, great Christian music, and Bible teaching. Listen to BBN by clicking the link in the description.